Hi there, and greetings from Helsinki. It's Tuukka here from Utopia. We work with several marketplaces, including Jofogas in Hungary, Tutti in Switzerland, and Tori in Finland. And we help these marketplaces to automate the moderation of the ads or the listings on their site. So, for example, if you have duplicate images or duplicate listings on your site that you would like to get rid of, or if you would like to prevent any fraudulent behavior that affects your customer experience and ultimately your revenues, or if you would like to publish your ads in real time but still pre-check all of them, we can certainly help. So if you're interested, there are further details on our sponsor page. We'd very much like to talk to you. Have a great rest of the day.
Fantastic. But thank you very much for joining us today to talk about what's happening in the South African market and how you guys at Property24 are doing innovation. Can we start by getting an idea of what is Property24, and what's the underlying business model that you have?
Sure. Property24 has been around for quite a long time in the South African market. It wasn't the leading vertical for quite a while. It actually had a different business model entirely. In the early days, it was actually a mortgage switching business in partnership with one of the big banks. And about 10, 11 years ago, we decided to get into the real estate vertical race at that stage. And there was a leader in the market at the time called Private Property. And we put quite a lot of effort into disrupting that model. And we've come out 11 years later as a leader in real estate, in the real estate vertical space in South Africa. The space is quite developed. If you compare it to other developing markets, South Africa is slightly different. We're kind of a mixture between a first world and a third world. So we have quite a sophisticated real estate agency marketplace. We don't have very strong horizontals playing in the property space. So Gumtree and OLX are both relatively weak in both property and autos, in fact. And we've taken that leadership position in the real estate space now. Yeah, so we're the kind of leading real estate portal in the market.
And what's the business model that you guys have? Is it a straight advertising model, or do you dip into transactions, or do you actually have throwbacks to financing as well from the original days?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've actually gone through various iterations of models, and we're not in the transaction model. In the early days, when we first started disrupting the market here, we actually launched quite an interesting model that was linked to the transaction. So we charged agencies a fee per property sale that they did, regardless of how many listings they had on our site. And it was quite a low fee, but it was an interesting model. It didn't work at the end of the day, but it did get us into a position where we had all the content in the market, which was a leg up, in the kind of early day race. Subsequent to that,
quick question: why didn't it work? What went wrong with this sort of pay per lead model?
It was actually a great model for the agents. They liked the model. It was a much more complex model than just like a pay per. It wasn't a pay per lead. It was actually a pay per transaction. But it was a much more complex model. There was a whole lot of we tried to digitize the entire value chain, and we couldn't get it right for various reasons. It was very difficult to influence the behavior of an estate agent on the ground. So we couldn't get the estate agent on the ground to actually behave in the way that we needed them to electronically instruct attorneys, for example, and to get the model to work. But it actually was quite a good model for the estate agents in general. One of the big problems we had with it was that we could never match up the actual deal in the land registry at the end of the day with the estate agent who did it from inception. It was very difficult to do. We tried it. We went around in circles, and at the end of the day, we kind of threw up our hands and said, okay, this is really difficult. And we switched that model to a subscription model, much like a kind of an early days Rightmove subscription model. Yep. And since then, what we've constantly tried to do is to match our model in terms of value that we provide to the agent. So, if you map your market by value that they are getting from you, and you can do that in various different ways. For example, you can map it by a lead given to, you can actually value every single lead if you want, based on the value of the property that's being sold. If you do that exercise, you'll see a curve. And if you look at your model and you plot that model onto that curve, what you obviously got to try and do is you've got to try and get your model as close to that curve as possible, so that you're actually charging for value that you're actually giving. And the more you can get your model to align with that curve, the less inefficiency there is in your model, and also the better yield you can get per agent. Otherwise, you have to have a flat fee or levels of fees, etc. So, we've constantly changed or iterated on our model to get as close to that as possible. And at the moment, we're in a hybrid model, which is on the for sale side, on the secondary for sale side, is lead bucket based, along with value based. So we have a matrix of buckets of leads. So, for example, it could be 25 to 50 leads in a value range of wherever your median value is of the property that you're selling. And if you fall into that bucket, then there's a certain monthly fee that you pay us. So we have the two levers of number of leads and median value of your property that you fall into the bucket, and that will be your subscription price. But then we combine that with a per listing fee on rentals, because per listing works much better in the rental space for lots of other reasons as well. And then we combine that with a flat subscription fee for things like branding, as well as a variable cost fee on value-added services. So if you're buying advertising in certain areas that are expensive areas, you're going to pay more for the positions in those areas compared to a less expensive area. So we have a lot of different moving parts in our pricing. It is quite complex. That's the downside, is that it's quite complex for our market, but it has served us well so far.
The one thing I'm not understanding is if I've got an average price of, I don't know, $200,000, how do you know how many leads I'm going to get? Because that would have to determine the outcome, right? Or do I get to buy a volume of leads?
No, we charge you forward, but based on your previous leads. So we look back to see how many leads you've had before, and we charge that to you in advance. So that's why it is a little bit of a complex model, and there also has to be buffer zones in between the lead brackets, and you have to kind of try and keep everyone stable in their brackets. So you don't see a lot of movement in the brackets because there is quite a lot of stability in those offices. They are playing in an area with a certain number of listings. There has to be some major movement in an office for it to jump out of a bracket.
Right. Now I understand. Let's talk about COVID. What's been the impact of COVID in the South African market, and has that sort of impacted your business?
Yeah, so it was very harsh. The South African lockdown, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the South Africa experienced one of the harshest lockdowns in the world. It was very extreme. So the impact was really severe. We locked down very early because we were behind everyone else on COVID. So we locked down on the 27th of March when the numbers were still very, very low here. And the lockdown lasted all the way to about the middle of August, when we moved to a level 2, when you could actually people could actually start kind of getting out of their houses and doing things. So it was a long and extreme lockdown. It had the effect, obviously, of just completely stopping the market altogether. Absolutely nothing happened. So estate agents couldn't do anything except, you couldn't even do a virtual show house because you couldn't go to the house to show it virtually. You weren't allowed. In fact, under the lockdown rules, estate agents were not allowed to operate at all. So it was a real shock to everyone. Obviously, cash flow stopped for everyone dead. The deeds office, which is our land registry here, stopped operating. And without the deeds office operating, your cash flow stops entirely because your deal flow stops entirely. So yeah, it was quite tough. After the middle of August, the market came back, and the positive side of it is that we had 2 interest rate cuts, and we're now sitting at the lowest interest rates that we've seen in many years, and that has stimulated the market. So we had this pent-up demand that built up. Then we had this reduction in interest rates, and suddenly we just had this huge kick in the market after we opened up, and we've seen we went through about a 30% dip in kind of lead volumes through the lockdown period. Post that period, we came out and we saw a 50% increase year on year in lead volumes. Mm-hmm. And there was this kind of mini boom in sales happening. Unfortunately, the deeds office, which is a government organization, had this kind of stop-start, opened and then closed, and there's been real delays in processing all of these transactions. So we can't yet see how many transactions have actually happened compared to last year, and if we're up or down or what. We know anecdotally from the market that there's a lot of sales that are happening, but we can't see it in the data yet, and we're waiting for the deeds office to catch up on all the registrations and for the money to flow, which has started flowing, obviously.
So how did you adapt your business to these? I think it worked out correctly. 5 months of being totally locked down. I also heard somewhere there's no alcohol was sold as well at the same time, right? Is that true?
we had a lot of time on our hands. We weren't allowed cigarettes or alcohol, believe it or not. And I mean, my wife nearly went absolutely crazy, but that's another story. There was illicit sales all over the place. So obviously we had to work from home, and it wasn't such a big deal for us because we took a decision at Property24 to actually move people to work from home before the lockdown started. So we were very cautious, and we knew that something might happen, and so we started the process earlier, which gave us that opportunity to kind of prepare ourselves and get everyone's computers to their houses and everyone's internet connections right, etc. And so we were okay from a business perspective. Obviously we're quite a successful business, so cash flow is not an issue for us. We have enough cash reserves, etc. And what we really worried about was we worried that our customers would go out of business. That was our big concern, and because in all of these markets, when you look at the profile of estate agent offices in any market, you have a long tail of small offices that don't have a lot of leeway when it comes to cash. So we switched off our fees for 2 months. We said, okay, we're free in the lockdown period. And then when the lockdown opened up and we knew that sales were actually happening, then we said, okay, now we're charging again. And we didn't get into deferring fees or anything like that. The view that we took was that we shouldn't be the financial backstop for the agents. There were other avenues. The government made funding available, banks would make funding available, etc. And it seems to have worked out. We've gone through the worst of it, and we seem to have come through the other side now.
Okay, so then when you think about innovation within the business, innovation in the services provided to your customers, etc., what are some of the things that you've done, and are these things that are one-off changes, or do you think they're going to be permanent changes?
When lockdown happened, we obviously all sat down together and said, okay, what do we need to do? What can we do? And to be quite honest, there was very little that we could do that could actually make an impact and affect how sales were happening or how the market was working. Obviously, we can look at things like virtual tours and videos, but we already had the facility to provide that. Agents doing virtual show houses, we did have queries of customers saying, look, we're going to have to move to virtual show houses, etc. But the fact is that there are tools like Zoom and WhatsApp that very easily and far better than what we could do cater for an agent showing a house to a customer. The one element that we looked at that we think is a good idea but we ran out of time because then lockdown opened, was that was to allow scheduled virtual show days. So we had to actually switch off our show day functionality because obviously show days weren't allowed, and unfortunately, if we had left it on, agents would continue to use it as a means of kind of spamming our base without show days. So we had to switch it off. And we, if the lockdown had carried on, we would have switched that back on, but for virtual show days and with the method of signing up for those virtual show days. Yeah. The lockdown then ended, and then it was like a moot point, and we haven't revisited that yet. Obviously the internal innovation is more to do with process and efficiency. Salespeople learning to do Zoom calls, learning to sell over Zoom, not going to see a customer, actually it does have a big impact on our business. It makes them a lot more efficient. They don't have to be on the road. Their time is used more effectively. So that has been a very good thing for us. I think that.
Just a quick question on that. How have you gone about sort of monitoring or tracking performance? How do you know people are working and doing the stuff they're meant to do?
So it depends on what.
It's like a big brother question, but I'm
curious. I know. It's look. We're fortunate that we have an incredibly good team of people in P24, and we're very lucky. And I've never felt the need to actually monitor the goings on. However, when you look at the different parts of the business, there are different ways. So obviously, when you're looking at the call center, the support center, it's pretty easy because everything goes through a call software. So you can see your call drop rates, your length of call rates, etc. Who hasn't taken a call? All of that is relatively easy. On moderation, it's also relatively easy because there are queues that they have of work, and you can monitor all of what they're doing. Where it becomes much more, sales is also easy because you've got CRM systems and they're ticking off and making notes and telling you what visits they've done, etc. So all those things are fine. Where it becomes much more difficult is your software developers, and we obviously look at throughput of development, but I mean, people will say that it is possible to measure, but it's really hard to measure because it's hard to compare, one piece of work to another piece of work, and you try and kind of estimate points of work, etc. So it's a gray area of measurement. We've looked at the work, all the throughput that we've had in the period, and it seems to be pretty good. So the feeling that we get is the guys that we have are still working as much and as hard as what they were. So I think it's been pretty good. As a management team, we feel that the business has been productive.
Okay, so if we're then I've been asking everyone the same sort of question: is if you pull out a crystal ball and over the next sort of 3 to 5 years, you sort of stare into it. And how do you see the industry changing, and how do you see your role in the industry changing? And what are the trends that you think are going to emerge?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is kind of just the tail that as we go through the COVID, what happens out of there, and what I'm seeing, and certainly it was a trend that was happening before that. I think that COVID has come along as an accelerant, and it's accelerated lots of things that were happening anyway. We started seeing a lot more efficiency starting to happen with estate agents, particularly the younger entrants into the market. So just actually a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at a demo of a system that these young guys were showing me, these young estate agent team were showing me, and I was completely blown away by what they've built themselves as a process flow, lead gen, workflow management, CRM. Using the land registry database to map all of the properties in the area and understand exactly what's happening with all of them. It was really, really good, and the result of that was that they were able to scale their efforts much more than a traditional agency would. So they don't need an office, and they can scale up. They can handle a lot more customers and a lot more sales with very good customer service efficiency than what a normal traditional agent would do. I think that that is going to start happening more and more. I think that COVID has forced everyone to be more efficient and to figure out how they can actually become better. It's focused them really internally. So I think that we're going to start seeing that. We're seeing a lot of consolidation of smaller offices. We're seeing physical offices closing down, but not the business closing down. So I can run a real estate business and I don't need a physical office anymore. I think that's going to be a big trend going forwards. I think that content, the quality of content is going to improve dramatically as we go forward, because the more focus agents put on online, the better that content will become. So more video content. We've seen some really great video content coming out of some of the agents who are now making it part of their processes. And I think we'll see more efficiency from both the agent and the buyer. So I think that buyers now, consumers, will start demanding more, and they'll start saying, look, I don't want to come and drive out to this property without maybe seeing it virtually first. So I'd like to see a tour, a virtual tour, or I'd like you to go there and show me some things, because consumers have now gotten used to, remote calling and remote meetings, etc. as well. So hopefully that will also push in that direction. So I think we'll see a big improvement in content. And then I think that because agencies need to get more efficient, they're going to start looking at data much more so than in the past. One of the innovations we're doing now is we're building and launching a market intelligence tool along with our data tool, which is the registry data tools. And that market intelligence tool is something that I believe all agents should have, where you're seeing all the detail, all the data about the area that you're operating in. Demand side data, supply side data, asking to selling prices, competitive information, what's my market share, is it going up or down, how am I competing versus another agent, what's my quality like, all those factors. So where agents before were kind of flying blind in a way, or weren't aware of these things, they're now becoming much more focused on them. So a simple one, is price counseling. How many agents do price counseling after the first week by looking at metrics? Very simple, but not a lot of agents do that. They do it more by feel.
So it sounds like there are significant opportunities for you to play in this market over the next 5 years, and to position yourself as not only the leading advertising vehicle, but also, and it's very similar to the conversation we had with Hitesh from India a couple of calls back, as old world, a couple of Zoom meetings ago, where what he wants to do is focus in on how do I provide a higher quality service to my customers, and that involves moving not into the transaction, but putting in place systems and processes to help them transact better.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So we don't see ourselves getting into the transaction model here. We have more of a right move view of the world, where we believe there's a strong place for agents in the secondary sell market, and it's just about pricing and efficiency. And we think we can help them to do a better job at that, and bring the benefits to the consumer.
Yeah. And just one other sort of question: what is because a part of the core of making this all work really well is a good CRM system sitting on the agents' desktops that have the capacity to help them produce market comparative reports or pricing, adjustment reports, which is always a conversation, etc. How does the sort of the CRM market look like, and do you play in that market?
We do. So when we first started investing in the market, we actually invested a huge amount of money into a local CRM system. It's called Prop Control, and we went out to the market and said, we're going to build the best system in the market, and we're going to give it away for free. And we built an incredibly good system. We had an anchor with one of the largest agencies in the country that was our anchor tenant, and we worked closely with them to build the system. The system is fantastic. It's really good. However, there are other players in the market that are also building systems, and they all come at it from different angles. And there are so many different needs in the market. And this is the problem with these CRM systems is, you find one agency that works entirely differently to another agency for various reasons. And it's incredibly hard to give each of those at each end of the spectrum a tool which is valuable to them. They all find different things valuable. So even though we have built this, what we think is a great tool, I don't think we're under the illusion that there aren't better tools out there, or there won't be better tools out there. And we've often asked ourselves if we are if we are meant to be the ones to provide those great CRM tools. And after, I must say, after seeing what some of the, like this last visit that I've seen with a demo of this system, it's not something that we would build. It's something that is so bespoke to the way that these guys work and is so tailored to them that we just simply wouldn't go down to the detail that they have gone down to. So I kind of hope that that other players in the market, innovative players, come in and start building more innovative CRMs than what we've seen so far. And I wouldn't be upset if our system was disrupted, and there were better systems out there, because it would just mean more efficiency. It would mean a better market altogether. But I don't think that we're going to be the one to do that, because we don't think that that we're best positioned to play in that space. I think that you have to have a really, really strong focus to do it well.
JP, thank you very much. I like what you guys are doing. Well done on your market leadership. I love the innovative pricing model. I think it's quite funky, complex but funky, and seems to work in the market, which is important. And I agree with you that assisting with the industry to do just far more efficient transactions is the way in which you will be able to position yourself for strong growth. So thank you very much for taking the time today to chat.
Thanks for having me, Simon.
Hi there, and greetings from Helsinki. It's Tuukka here from Utopia. We work with several marketplaces, including Jofogas in Hungary, Tutti in Switzerland, and Tori in Finland. And we help these marketplaces to automate the moderation of the ads or the listings on their site. So for example, if you have duplicate images or duplicate listings on your site that you would like to get rid of, or if you would like to prevent any fraudulent behavior that affects your customer experience and ultimately your revenues, or if you would like to publish your ads in real time but still pre-check all of them, we can certainly help. So if you're interested, there are further details on our sponsor page. We'd very much like to talk to you. Have a great rest of the day.